we call it a swag, and we have bucket ranges by T-shirt size.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay, is there another hand, please?
The range that's like, the range is like $5 to $10 million. What T-shirt size did you put in that?
That depends on the company. Yeah.
I was part of the thing, you mentioned it earlier, where it wasn't a rename. We had fields that were 2 digits, where we were trying to make them 4 digits. And the average company spent something like $20 to $50 million on their projects doing that.
Yeah, then the ranges will be, I mean, I was
Most
dealing
of us know that as the year 2000, right?
But it doesn't actually. I was dealing with an online retailer in England, the biggest one over there. And I in the conversation I was having with their CIO, I just threw out the same range I just gave you. Extra small was $10,000 to $25,000. And after I finished, just rattling off some range, he goes, "But yeah, all of our ranges would have a couple more zeros after all of the numbers you just mentioned."
It just seems like the magnitude of this problem is much, much bigger than it looks like on this.
Well, you could aggregate it together up to a portfolio level. This is likely talking about individual efforts, right? Individual products or code bases that are being developed. But you could certainly try to aggregate it up to higher levels. Okay. All right, what about at the technical level? That was more at the business level. What about visibility at the level that people were hands-on? Well, you could make it, you could represent it in the code. I'll illustrate each of these. Your defect tracking system, that was our JIRA example. In the product backlog, or in a technical debt backlog. I don't know if anybody here is old enough to remember this, but in the early 1980s, I used to use the Gosling Emacs editor, and all the source code was available. And I was browsing the source code, and when I got to the redisplay code in the Emacs editor, as you got to the comment, there was a skull and a crossbow in the comment as you're scrolling down. And basically, there was a line below it that said, "If you think you understand the code that follows, you're wrong and you don't. Don't screw with it." That's what it said. And so here James Gosling made it clear to everybody, there's debt in this code, you won't understand it. It uses a form of dynamic programming to do string-to-string replacement. Don't touch it. Or you will break Emacs. Okay, so if you really had some nasty code, you could choose to put the skull and crossbones in front of it and let everybody know.
That's great.
I mean, by the way, if I asked every technical person in this room, where is the nastiest piece of code in your system, my guess is you will have zero problem pointing that out, that you probably know exactly where it is. Right? So I don't think technical people have a problem knowing where the stuff is. Now, how might we give visibility to? Well, all right, fine. So we're in our defect tracking system, maybe Jira or a free tool, whatever it might be. We might just label some of our normal defects as, hey, these are actually things I want to call out as technical debt. Create a special label for them, tag them as such. So that would be an obvious way just to reuse whatever technology you happen to have in place already, if you found that useful, of course. Some teams like to do this. That's a product backlog. And they'll add items to the product backlog that look like that. There's a refactor X. We're going to go refactor the X part of our system here. And I know, what do you guys think about that idea? Good idea. Makes it explicit, right? If not for nothing else.
I think it has management. Don't just consider that waste.
How do you get it past management? Yes, indeed. All right, please.
The challenge is how to put business value against these type of things.
That's the problem, right? All right, you're all now product owners. What's the value of refactoring X? See, you're the product owners. You have to put the product backlog into some reasonable order for doing it. You'd like to think that you'd work on higher value things before you would work on lower value things.
Right.
And how would you know? I'll give you an actual example of this, please.
So the value of it is that it reduces the cost of the value of reducing technical debt is that it reduces the cost of other valuable work that you would do. The thing is that it's not across the board. Whatever thing you're doing to reduce technical debt is going to reduce the cost of certain varieties of product backlog items.
Right.
So what you really want to do is, okay, if this reduction in technical debt only affects changes to our claims processing system, then we're not going to work on it until we're getting ready to make some big changes to our claims processing system, at which point we want to put it first.
Okay, so we could sort of prioritize based on what we're going to be touching sooner rather than touching later. I mean, I see this a lot. I hate it every time I see it. hate it with a passion.
Mhm.
But I recognize why certain companies are doing this, right? Technical debt has ballooned to such a level where the only thing they can do is say to the product owner, I need you to trade off new features so we can go clean up the mess you already have, which is basically what that picture says.
Mhm.
Now, most of the time, I think you should never do this. But I see it all the time, so I know it happens, right? They'll put these technical debt refactoring. So if you're not supposed to do this, then we better talk about what you should be doing. That'll be our next piece on how do we service the debt. All right, so we could do that. Or I've actually seen this technique. I've liked this one. I saw it a couple times at companies where it was done very effectively. So imagine you're in sprint planning. This is your sprint backlog that you might produce during a sprint planning. The blue bricks are product backlog items. The green cubes are tasks associated with the product backlog items. I've seen certain organizations that actually maintain a technical debt backlog. So if they understand that there is technical debt, now whether or not you would put your 45-minute, change the uppercase to a lowercase up there, you might. If it really was going to be 45 minutes or something. I mean, I want to be careful about not being ridiculous. If things take 8 seconds, I don't create a card and put it up on the wall. All right, but maybe it's bigger. So we actually create cards, if you want. Go visual with me for a moment. Imagine you're doing this all on a big wall. You could put cards up there where each card represented some known technical debt within the system. And when you were doing sprint planning, you might say this, well, we're going to be working on this feature here. You know what, by working on that feature, we're going to be going into that code over there. And that's a wonderful opportunity to update the G from uppercase to lowercase because we're going to be touching the code anyway. So what do? In sprint planning, we pull it over. And we move it in. We say we're going to do it here. We make it explicit. But having the technical debt wall, if you like, or board up on the wall, is often a very effective way of not only understanding what's actually out there that we know about. Remember, it won't represent what we don't know about, but what we know about, and it gives us the opportunity every sprint to consider including some of it. But
How's that different than putting the technical debt as part of your product backlog? I mean, if you ordered it properly to say, hey, I know if I'm going to be working on this feature next,
Great question.
I might as well just have it combined.
Right, but the difference here was go with the visual metaphor and then I'll explain the details. In this case, it was a blue brick. In this case, it was a green cube. Blue bricks are product backlog items, something of value from the product owner's perspective.
Mhm.
Everything in there had better be valuable from the product owner's perspective. Green cubes are tasks. We, at the technical level, own those. We put in whatever task we think we have to do to get the job done in a professional way, aligned with our definition of done, hence the idea of having a strong definition of done. So when I put it in over here, I'm forcing the product owner to make a trade-off that the product owner probably can't make. Doing it over here, I don't involve the product owner. It's just put it.
Isn't that hiding transparency?
Now, I'm going to show you why in a moment.
Okay.
So actually, we did that. We did that at one point. We had a definition done that said, in order for a story to be done, it couldn't have any critical or high defects, but if they were medium or low, we could defer them and do them at some point in the future. And we ended up an 8-month project with absolutely 0 defects. It worked.
So I want to come back to this point because he raises a good point. Isn't this obfuscating transparency, right? And I'm going to argue that it's not, right? And I'm going to show why I believe that's true. And you can disagree with it, but I'll show why. Please.
But when you are committing a sprint backlog to product owner, so how you see that placeholder that you are committing something and they may know that your velocity is down because at sprint backlog you don't know what is the technical debt. So how you convince your product owner to put technical debt into the sprint backlog?
I don't convince them at all.
Then you are overcommitting.
Oh, no, never overcommit, right? Overcommitting, has business consequences,
Yeah.
right? He said to the business, we're going to get this stuff done at the end of the sprint. They may make a commitment to a customer. So don't do that, right? But what I'm saying is, to the question that you're both asking, do you tell your product owner you're going to do testing? Or is that implied by the professional work that you guys will do? If you don't tell them about testing, why would you tell them about refactoring? Isn't that implied as part of the work? I mean, would you, product owner, would you like to tell me the rest of the work you think I should do at the technical level also? You don't have no reason to explode. So as I said, this is going to be the last part that we discuss in a moment. Please.
There's also a big difference that in one, you have 8 things where you create that, and 1 where you clean it up. Where in this one, everything you touch, you're cleaning a little
That's
bit.
the key.
You don't get fit then working out on something. Like that's,
Well
it's
said.
a clean as you go. That's how you get rid of it.
Sorry, well said. Yeah, that makes, sorry about that. My notifiers are popping up, turn them off. That tells me I'm supposed to be at my homeowners association meeting back in Colorado. I wonder if they'll figure out I'm not there. Oh, well, let's take this a bit further. Let's
Now we know
service,
why you're here.
let's service the debt.
Here because it's
right?
warm.
Again, I'm going to pass through this because I think we're a little bit behind on our time, but we're good. So I'm going to leave time for a discussion at the end. Let's go right to this. I'm going to use a couple terms. I've already used some of these, but let me define my terminology. First, I made these terms up because I just needed a way to refer to certain things. Happened upon technical debt. I didn't know it was there. I went into the code and went, oh, that's a mess. And the guy who wrote it was here 5 years ago. He's since been gone, and now's the first time we're going to go modify that code. Wow, this is like a disaster. So I happened upon it. I didn't know it existed prior to that point in time. Known debt. Yeah, I know that there's a problem there. And I can put a card up on the wall that tells you exactly what problem there is there. It's known to me. It's known to you. Targeted debt. Debt that I'm actually planning to address, say in the next sprint. So it's known debt that I'm going to target. So I need those terms. I offer this up as an algorithm for how to approach servicing technical debt. I will overview the algorithm, and then all the rest of this discussion focuses on aspects of the algorithm. This is how I approach technical debt. First, determine if you should even service the debt. Okay, just because there's debt doesn't mean you should pay it back. Right? We've already given an example, right? In the case of the derivatives trading, right? We're not going to pay that debt back. If you are going to pay it back, right? And if you're going to be in the code doing work, right? And you discover, say, happened upon debt, you clean it up. If I happen upon a debt in the code, I don't go log it somewhere, I just fix it. For reasons I'm going to discuss in a moment. Now, what if I happen upon a lot of debt? Wow, that is a monster mess. I might not have the time this sprint to clean it all up. So I might clean up to a threshold level and then log the remaining part as now known debt. I didn't know it existed, but I do know it exists now. Log that piece.